Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Gunnar Eichler, as hopefully you know by now, and here with me today is one of our intensity endurance athletes, Mr. Joey Rodgers. He is a triathlete by trade, but has made his way around a few different sports, and I'll let him kind of get into a brief history in athletics and how he landed in triathlon. Two separate times now. One lengthy hiatus, but
Yep.
Joey.
Yep. Hello everyone. I'm Joey, and I have a varied sports background. And I think the first two sports that I did when I was little, like 5 years old, was I learned how to swim, and speed skating. Speed skating was my competitive sport from like ages 5 to 10. And then once I stopped being homeschooled and I transferred to a real school, I guess, in sixth grade, it just became too difficult to travel to skate meets out of town and then manage school, like in-person school on top of that. I kind of joined the junior varsity swim team from there. But it wasn't until I joined the varsity swim team in my 10th grade year where I really started to transform as an athlete. And I think really like learn that work ethic to achieve big goals. And for whatever reason, something with that really resonated with me because previous to my experience on the varsity swim team, I just thought to myself, like, there's people that are more athletic than me and people that have grown up like playing lacrosse or whatever that I didn't like. It's hard for speed skating to translate to any of like the in-person like school sports. So I just thought I was bad at them, but anyways, like varsity swimming really taught me that you can work hard and get better at something. And my ultimate goal there was to qualify for states, and I ended up missing it in 10th grade in the breaststroke and the 100 free. But in junior and senior year, I pivoted to a little bit more distance, and I was able to qualify for the 500 both years. And that was a really exciting time. And again, I really think that, I was able to get my swim background nailed down through that. I also did a year of lacrosse randomly, and just some friends were doing it, and I tried it out. But that is a sport where at my school, a lot of kids had grown up on club teams and stuff, and picking that up at 15
Yeah,
years old was
not easy.
kind of brutal. And I would spend hours like tossing the ball against the wall with both hands, but it was just like it was really hard to make up that many years of missing groundwork.
I think my lacrosse team in high school, there was maybe one kid that started playing in high school that ever saw the field on varsity. Everyone
Yeah.
else like just wasn't.
Yeah.
Tough,
And
tough curve.
I don't know. And I tried to pick up soccer with friends too. I had a bunch of friends that played soccer, and I did play some intramurals in college. And I'm the type of person where I think it's beneficial to try a bunch of stuff. So
Yeah.
if my friends were going skiing or water skiing, I would go with them. I picked up surfing for a brief moment in time. I was just always down to try anything active. And my senior year, I ended up doing varsity rowing crew with a bunch of friends because my swim background actually translated pretty well to rowing, and I ended up having a pretty decent erg time. It was really the form that I had to work on in rowing. But anyways, like that was my high school sports background, and then when I got into college, I kind of fell off. I hate to say finding myself because that's so cliche, but I kind of lost touch with sports. I wasn't a good enough swimmer to go D1 by like any stretch. And I went to Virginia Tech and their D1 school.
Yeah,
I was
that's
nowhere close. So I joined the swim club, but I didn't really get any real consistent training that I had been missing for like, that my varsity team in high school provided. And I just kind of missed that. And in right around the time period of 2017 to 2019, I moved out to California for a year-long interest internship, And I got back into speed skating, and it had been like 10 or 11 years. But for some reason, I just really missed that drive, and I kind of went crazy with it. Eating, I was living for like skating. I actually almost dropped out of school to try to, on a long shot, like I wanted to make the Team USA for speed skating, but I was also making up like 10 years of missing skating
Yeah.
work. So I was trying to train morning, night, get my lifting in, do stair stepper on my lunch breaks at work. Like I was really going to town, but again, to make up that amount of, depth in 3 years, and I was going back and forth like through college too. And so it was just kind of complicated logistically to make that work. So anyways, that brings me to triathlon. So how did I get into that? I was in college and I noticed that a lot of speed skaters were cycling to cross train. And I thought, in 2018, I bought a road bike for commuting around college. But then I was like, maybe I should try joining a cycling team because a lot of skaters are doing that. And I'm just training a lot alone
Yeah.
at college because there's no speed skating team at Virginia Tech. So, trying to find community. I talked to the cycling team, but it was just kind of hard to I don't know. It was hard to break into that. I feel like everybody already knew each other and it was just hard to break into that circle.
Also, like cycling's a weird sport to get into as well because
Yeah,
it's weirdly team oriented. Like you need that,
they
and
are.
then I would say like the level, like you know, every sport talks about the barrier of entry, whatever that is. But in cycling, like the level of the barrier of entry is ridiculous, like skill wise and fitness. Like I say 90% of triathletes can't, hang on in a cat 4 crit. Like that's
Yep.
so
Well, and also, so, I think that I just realized I was like, this barrier to entry is really high. People have expensive bikes, but, I had a bike. I don't know. It just didn't work. So what I did was I talked to the triathlon team because I was like, I have a swim background, somewhat. So, and even though I hated running, I knew it was good cardio for you. So in my head, I was like, if I can get good at running, I'll work on some mental discipline on pushing through something I don't like. And also it'll just help my skating because it's good cardio. So, joined the Tri team in 2018 and I raced with them in 2019. And what I found was I was like, dang, this is a group of really fit, fun, welcoming athletes, and they all like train hard. Like their swim sessions were harder than my time on the swim club. And this is way back when. I don't know what it is now or what the
right.
programs look like now, but just back then we were getting more yardage and intensity in on the tri swim practices than the swim club practices. So I was automatically down for it from that. And then I did my first sprint in 2019 and I fell in love with it from there. And the rest is
Yep.
history. Um,
Now
I
we're
did
here.
a I did a brief stint returning back to speed skating. So I ramped up to Ironman in 2022, and that was my first one. I kind of did my project was I want to prove to myself I can do all the distances. And so in 2022, I finally achieved that. And endurance wise, I was in the best shape of my life. And then I pivoted back to speed skating, where your races are like the longest one is like 5 minutes in indoor nationals. So going from Ironman like distance training to pivoting back to skating it was kind of a brutal transformation. And after that, I got into powerlifting to kind of prove a point. I was kind of lost after I achieved my goal at Skate Nationals in 2023. I podiumed, I got second, and that had been like a lifelong dream of mine. So I was really happy to achieve that. But then after that, I noticed I was very geared towards power output. So that brought me to powerlifting. And I had some friends kind of always talking to me and talking crap about, oh, you just do cardio, like you can't lift. And so I kind of got into it to prove a point. And then the other thing is like I wanted to keep working out, but I didn't really know what to do with myself. So I was powerlifting for like 6 months, and even though I got stronger, I just noticed like my back was hurting. I was very stiff. I didn't feel great. And I think that's when you reached out to me. We had met in 2021 at
Yeah.
Smithfield, I believe, or 2022, something
It
like that.
was the first year I did it, which is 2022. Yes, we met at the
2022.
2022 Smithfield Sprint Triathlon, Smithfield World
Yeah,
Championships.
yeah. I remember we were just
What a
talking
race.
in transition after the race.
Mhm.
I didn't know who you were. You were being chill, and I was like, "Oh, how'd you do?" And you were like, you're like, "I won." And I was like, "Oh, okay. This is." And then we followed each other and stayed in touch. And then I
Yeah,
remember you reached out, like it'd been a couple years later, and you kind of planted that seed of like, "Hey, are you thinking about returning to triathlon?" And at that point. I mean, I had bulked up a little bit. I was in powerlifting mode and I was strong, but compared to what I was doing, I was struggling to run like a couple miles at
yeah,
like pretty slow pace compared to what I had been doing. So in my head, it was just this mental challenge to get back into triathlon because I knew it was going to require a lot of work. But um, I signed up for the challenge. I joined your coaching program in big spring 2024, and
yeah,
you kind of took me from my powerlifting self back into triathlon mode, and we've been working at it ever since.
yeah. And it was definitely like, and if anybody had watched the interview with Travis, like he was out of triathlon for 5 years, almost 4 years. And so it's similar of like, Joey, when you came back, almost rewiring that mentality of like you were at a level and then you didn't do it for a year and a half. And now
Yep.
it's like not only were you not doing it, but you were totally changing, not necessarily with the skating, but with the powerlifting, like the body type and
Yeah.
the response that your body had to training. And so it almost like, high power and anaerobic efficiency is great, from speed skating, fantastic. But then you start to go into powerlifting and you're totally changing what your body knows how to do. And
Yep.
so I would say it took a bit of time just to kind of rewire it back into, that cardio specific instead of pure strength. So it was good. But I remember one of the things is like, even when, like, before we were working together, when we were just friends, you were like, always, I want to break 5 hours in, the 70.3 distance, right? And that was kind of your thing, is like, even those 2 years or however long that was, year, 2 years before we started working together, you're just like, I want to break 5 hours, want to break 5 hours. And then you
Yeah.
stop the sport. And I was like, dude, you were 508. And like, I
Yeah.
knew from before, like, I knew the work you were doing. I was like, wasn't ideal. I was like, just make
Yeah.
a couple tweaks and we can get you under that 5 hours. And so I definitely
Yeah.
wanted to see you hit that goal, which is kind of why I was like, hey,
Yeah.
you interested in coming back? And, well, we got there, which is
Yeah.
absolutely great.
Well, and I gotta thank you for that too, because honestly, I think at that point, like I had made enough comebacks. I've done so many pivots from sport to sport. I've done endurance, I've done sprint based sports. I've now done powerlifting,
Mhm.
and I feel like now that I don't want to say I've done it all because there's still a lot more to do, but like I've experienced a wide variety, a
The
wide
whole
range,
spectrum of
like
like
endurance sports,
athletic capability.
power sports, and like everything in between. And I've been in and out of shape, and I knew when you reached out to me, I was like, oh, dude, transitioning back to triathlon is going to be brutal. um and it took a lot of mental energy this first couple months to just get back in the pool and like learn to
Yeah.
suck at something all over again. I almost think that was like mentally harder than some of the more intense workouts that we're doing now, because when you're that out of shape and you remember what you were doing before, it gets you down, you know?
Oh yeah. And that's kind of exactly what I wanted to like talk about, was what did that feel like to get back? And what was really the challenge there? Because, I can speak from my end. A lot of it was there were, consistent issues, shin splints, and,
Yep.
a lot of that comes down to the strength work you're doing outside the three sports and the run form, which between myself and your PT, like we've kind of gotten shored up. And then, that was a huge hurdle. And then I know that mental, like, how do I get back into the sport where you have a very well known expectation? And, like for myself, like I can use myself as an example when I was swimming, right? Like I swam as a kid, took essentially a 6-year hiatus outside of summer swim league, swam 2 years in college, and then essentially another 5-year hiatus, and then started swimming again, right? And so it's like I can take the training data out of it because I'm not wearing a watch. I just look at the clock and it's like, sure, you have an idea of what intervals you were hitting before, but when it comes to especially cycling and running, everything you do, you're looking at it like, it's look at pull up Training Peaks or Strava, and it takes you 2 seconds to find the numbers that you were doing 3 years ago. And so that kind of stuff really can play a game with you mentally. And so, kind of how did that really feel? Because it's not like you were, like I talked about Travis, that's 5-6 years. That's a huge gap, right? You can kind of separate yourself a little bit better, I feel. But when it's, a year and a half, 2 years, it's got to be hard.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I knew it was going to be hard because, again, it wasn't my first rodeo. Like when I came back to speed skating in 2023, I wasn't matching my 2019 peak skate self. And even then, like, remembering what it felt like to skate consistently as a kid. And then same thing when I went back to swimming in college, like it had been like 5 or 6 years since I had swam in high school. And then I was looking at my times there, when I would join tri team in college, and I was thinking like, dude, I am nowhere close to my high school times, but
Yeah.
I think like this is where I think in my adult life I've learned that like how mental the sport is. And what I mean by that is not just pushing through hard workouts. Like, yes, that's what it is, but also learning to give yourself uh grace and time. And I don't know how many of your viewers or maybe yourself struggle with this, but for me personally, um I think it's like a natural response for me to be too hard on myself. My
Hey,
my my expectations are too high, and so when I come back to something and I know what I was doing in the sport before, with just a couple years off, I come back, and I'm struggling to run, some like 8-minute miles, and I was doing, 7 or 8 miles at low sevens pace in the hills before in college. That's hard. When I come back to the pool, that is supposed to be, I almost think it's worse when you have a background in the sport and you have so many times of like, you're thinking back to your previous glory days. And now like being bulked up and powerlifting, I get in the pool and I'm stiff. I don't have the flexibility. I could not even hold proper streamline. And I was
yeah, I
sinking
remember we
like
were talking a lot about that.
I was sinking like a rock, and I was gassed after like a couple 200s. That was like depressing at the time. But then, I kind of just sat with it, and I had to weirdly like enjoy that time, like learning to suck again and
Mhm.
just kind of be like, all right, well, this is the reality. I can sit here and beat myself up over it. And that was still like my gut instinct was just to be, I would walk away from those workouts kind of ticked off and, feeling a type of way about it. But I would basically have these conversations in my head where I'm like, okay, I can either just live in this, self-deprecating cycle and just walk away from the sport because I'm not what I was. Or I can approach it with, well, what did you expect? You've been out of it for a year and a half. Like,
Yeah.
chill out, and it's just put in the reps, turn off the watch.
Yeah,
That
that
and
was
that's
that was big for
easier.
us.
That's easier said than done because I thrive off of progress. I like seeing the progress. I like seeing the times improve. you've known this. You see my Training Peaks comment. I'm like, I killed it today. I had some sub 30-second 50s. I'm on fire. And then
Yeah.
I'll have other days where I'm just like, and
It
it's
could be
kind
a
of,
week later and you're like swimming 31s and you're like, oh no, I feel like I'm
yeah,
going
yeah,
backwards. And I'm
yeah,
just like,
exactly.
but no, I think like that really was the biggest challenge getting back into it, was that
Yeah.
mental hurdle. And even, even today, like it's still, and for myself, like, I think for a lot of athletes, that's just how we are. Like we're so hypercritical, and especially a sport that's just absolutely ridiculously data driven. And it's, not like team sports where you can analyze tape, but it's like you see the numbers in real time. Like it
Yeah.
is so high feedback, and it's really hard sometimes to separate yourself from that. Of like, I try to tell people like your threshold is different every day. Today your FTP is 280, tomorrow your FTP is 295, and a week from now it's 27. Like
Yep.
it fluctuates. And like one of the things that the training doesn't represent is how well you sleep, you eat, and your life stress, and that impacts stuff as well. But I think that was kind of the main storyline of that first season back 2024.
Yeah.
If there's anything else you want to add, like I know when you came back to it, you're like, I just want to get back into it. I want to feel good about it again. And then I'll do a 70.3 at the end of the year just to see where we are. And that was the main thing I was trying to tell you. Like, we're doing this just to see where we're at
Yeah.
at the end of the year. And I think there was a little bit of disappointment on your end because, like, in the back of your mind, you're like, no, I know I can be better. But to come
Yeah.
back and we were around, like, what, 520-ish,
We,
520, 525.
no, we were at, well, okay. So
That first one back.
the first one back, I think was a 5:29, but there's a little bit of I lost 11 minutes because of a bike mechanical. So if you
This is
take the
true.
11 minutes out, it still would have been my slowest 70.3. Um, Even with the 11 minutes gone, I think I would have been at like 5:19 or something. But um, I still was like, even if you take the 11 minutes out, slowest 70.3 time, I was feeling a little disappointed by that because you tell yourself like, hey, I'm just getting back into it. But when you already have previous times, it's so hard to not compare. It's a natural thing. You're like, I worked, because we started working in February or March or something, and that race was in October. So I was like, okay, I've been back at this for, several months now. And even when I left after Ironman to focus on skating for 6 months and then for powerlifting for 6 months, in my head, I was like, I was still always working out. It wasn't like
Right.
COVID where I just stopped for a year and I vegged out on the couch. Like that was not the case this time. So in my head, I was like, there should still be some of that leftover Ironman fitness somewhere. I
Yeah.
should be able to do better than my worst time.
Yeah.
But that didn't end up being the case. And
Yeah, pulled
so,
up. It was 5:30:17 was the official time.
okay. Okay. Yep.
And yeah, like we did look at the Training Peaks file for that bike mechanical. It was generally 10, 11 minutes. We're still looking at a 5:20, which is, like you said, probably the slowest you've ever done. And so it is tough, but where you were before was, kind of just an entirely different process. And then you're building on the speed skating you were doing. You didn't come back from something entirely different. So we finished that race, and it's again, I think you were feeling a little bit down about it, but I was like, okay, no, this is good. Like I was probably
Yeah.
more excited than you were at the end of that race. I was like,
Yeah.
no, we are on track. You will break that 5 hours. It's gonna happen. When we get into 2025, and I think, again, there was a lot of life stuff that you had. Like, got married this year. Everybody say,
Yep.
congrats, Joey. Congrats, Joey.
Thank you.
And so, like, that was in June, and, honeymoon, and it's like, that kind of month was a bit tough as far as training. But I think
Yeah.
the idea getting back was, okay, we have a baseline, and now what we're going to do is build on it, and we're going to get faster. And that's
Yep.
the main thing, is like we were actually able to kind of dip into that. Okay, let's improve the numbers as much as we can. and
Yes.
then we'll focus on pulling that endurance out of it. So the first half of the year was definitely a lot of that. Let's just try to get as fast as we can, and then come back from all of your wedding fun and really just kind of sink our teeth into some, higher workload stuff. But again, it was nothing crazy. And I kind of want to see your point of view of where really did not where, but what kind of things, trends, any workouts that really stuck out to you? Because I can speak to it from my point of view of like what were some critical things that we did, but on your end, like this year with the huge progress that we made, was there anything that was like, whether mentally, physically, just you remember kind of sticking out?
So I think the toughest workouts to do in the off season were the bikes because you're stuck on the indoor trainer, and I don't know about all the viewers or you, but I like the bike is my favorite to train when I'm riding outside, and then it's my least favorite
Least
to train
favorite to train inside.
in the winter.
Yep.
Um, it just becomes like anything over an hour, I really have to mentally prepare. Um, and it's crazy. I mentioned this to you before. I was thinking back to like my mentality training for Ironman, and I used to do like 4 to 5 hour just trainer sessions, and I was just staring at the power meter the whole time. I have a show on in the background, but I wasn't really watching it. I would just I don't know what that was, but my mentality, I'm not there yet with the trainer anymore. I also was burning out because I don't think that was sustainable long term. I was able to do that for a couple months, but anyways, I'm rambling on trainer. So I think the sessions that really helped me the most was the work on my slowest leg, which is not surprisingly the run.
That's what I was gonna get to, because like I know we kind of got in that groove where it's like
Yep.
let's swim because we know we're pretty solid in the water overall. Um, let's really hammer it, and like most of our volume was bike. Most of our volume was bike. I
Yes.
think if we did a 12-hour week, we're probably 9 hours of bike, an
Yep.
hour and a half of running, and then that leaves an hour and a half of swimming, right? So like that was I'd agree with you there. So
And I had to also come to you because so you mentioned the shin splints before.
yes.
Um, that is still a struggle. I think my body is getting there. I think we've corrected the form, but it's still like I can't run 3 days in a row. Like at some point, perfect form, shoes, the support, everything. I can throw everything at it, and I'm still gonna end up, my shins are gonna yell at me, if I do too much volume at once, or too much intensity. So we still have to be careful of that till this day. We're not really completely past that hurdle. We just know how to manage it. But back then, like even a year ago, it was worse. Um, and I remember in the off season, so leading up to the half marathon I did to kick off the 2025 season,
Yeah, back in March.
um, yep, we were doing a lot of cold weather, like track style workouts. So you'd have me
Mhm.
do whatever, 400 repeats, 300, 600s, and then some 800s for the longer efforts. And that was basically my cadence was do a track workout once a week, pretty much. My shins would be in pain the rest of the week, and this is before I fixed my form. But basically, I would recover the shins, and then we'd be ready to go again the next week, and then I would do another track workout. So I did that half marathon on no volume work related to the run. It was all purely off of track
Like
workouts.
one track workout a week, and that was
Exactly. And I
we're
think the
probably looking at
longest
5, 6 miles.
Yeah, the longest it ever got was like 5 or 6 miles, and I took it as an experiment. I was like, okay, so shin splints were the bottleneck. I couldn't do any distance like zone two long runs. There was not really like a single long run in that entire block. But I was like, it'll be interesting to see how we can do on a half marathon,
Mhm.
having just trained speed work. And I ended up PRing that half marathon. I think I was at an 8:02 pace. And
Yep,
what I
they're right
noticed,
around 145 or so.
yep. Yep. What I noticed is that towards the end, I was really hurting those last 3 miles, and then the last mile, I thought the half marathon distance was short enough that I could get away with no nutrition or hydration. I pre-gamed with electrolytes and I pre-gamed with carbs. So I had like two goos, and I had like I nursed down a bottle of Element, so like 24 ounces. So going into the race, I was carbed and I was hydrated, and I thought it was short enough that I could get away with not doing it, but I really faded that last mile. And my pace dropped to like 9:12 or
Yeah.
9:15. And I was holding like under 8 the whole time. So it just killed the average, that last mile. But that's where I think I noticed those last couple miles. I noticed that, like, hey, yeah, the lack of volume work here, I was starting to feel it the last couple miles. But
Yeah.
other than that, it was fine.
It was a good day, like for what it was. And I think, a lot of people would be stoked to run that fast off of, 5, 6 miles a week of running. So
Yeah, yeah.
definitely a good one. But I think as the year went on, we actually did a lot of work one-on-one with the run form and that kind of stuff. And then
Yep.
you started seeing a PT who kind of reiterated all the same things, but actually is able to give that, I can see, I know what I'm looking at, right? But I'm not a doctor, right? So I can't tell you exactly what the root cause is and how to fix it. So that was hugely helpful. And
Mhm.
again, like you said, it hasn't 180 fixed everything, but it's allowed you to do a little bit more. And I think when we got into that 70.3 training, we're looking at an hour and a half. I think we maybe got up to 2 hours a week of running.
Yep.
And for me, the critical stuff there was we were doing probably around 4 bricks a week. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, anything 10 to 20 minutes, and one of them was a little bit longer, like 30,
Yep.
45. And I think eventually it was probably close to an hour. Scrolling through, yeah. So an hour 10 ended up being the longest brick, but that's again like, we're throwing walking in there and that kind of thing. So your heaviest run week was just north of 2 hours. Just north of 2 hours. So there's like nothing insane on the run, but when we talk about what you did in that 70.3, we could talk about what you did in that
Yeah.
70.3. You PR'd your half marathon again, this time off the
Yeah.
bike. So let's kind of get into, really how the whole process has been feeling for you, and um, like what you feel, because we talked about what's worked, what you feel might have not been the right thing to do at times, if there is that, and also, how everything is kind of balanced with, you're a human being,
Yeah.
your normal life.
So I guess I'll did you want me to talk about the race first? And then
Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's get into that.
okay, yeah. So
That's the highlight of the year.
yeah, yeah,
We,
so
I'll let you
for,
take it.
for those of you who don't know, like the 70.3 was my A race. It was Wilmington, North Carolina. So that was my A race for the whole year. And like Gunnar said, one of my biggest goals in triathlon out once I did the Ironman, the next like biggest goal that I had been wanting or for years was a sub 5 hour 70.3. And I had done a 5:08 at
Indian Wells.
Indian Wells in 2022 off the back of Ironman California training. And so it was close, but no cigar. And again, kind of like I was happy to get my PR, but 8 minutes away from the sub 5 barrier, I was a little disappointed. So coming back to the sport with Gunnar, I was like, I want that sub 5 hour. Like that's my biggest goal. And so Wilmington, this year is where we finally did that. And I think this year, headed into the race, I want to say this is like the first year I really focus on myself, as a as like the complete package. Before, how I would trade, this is going to sound stupid now in hindsight, but like the before how I would race triathlons, especially in college, would be like race each leg like there's not something after it, you know. And then the most fun game I like to play was on the bike leg, since I had, you know, ever since I picked up a bike in college from the skate background, I just kind of was in the triathlon world already, like a little stronger in the age group category on the bike.
Mhm.
So for me, it became a game like, let me see how high I can make my bike ranking, and then I'll just pay for it on the run.
Oh
And
yeah.
this was the first year where I really took everything into account. And I meant like heading into North Carolina, I was like, I'm not going to be a hero on the swim. I'm not going to be a hero on the bike. I'm not going to overbike. I'm going to take into account everything. I'm looking at weather. I'm looking at humidity. I'm taking in Gunnar's advice. I'm going to consider all of my nutrition. I'm going to practice my nutrition. And in my long ride sessions, like I'm going to practice as if I can't take a break on the bike. Like I'm going to drink on the bike. I'm going to reach behind, take the bottles out. So there's as few surprises as possible on race day. And I think that paid off big dividends, you know, come race day. And in a 70.3, it's such a long race that really so much can go wrong. And you have to be prepared for, um, you know, anything to happen. And so where am I going with this? On race day, something did go sideways, and it was in the swim. And I, for the first time ever, I had a bout of vertigo. I don't know if this has happened to anybody else, but this is the first time this has ever happened to me. I was swimming, and I remember like halfway through the swim, I picked up my head to spot check, and I noticed I could not focus on the buoy ahead, and it was like everything was moving. And so I stopped and I started doing breaststroke, treading water, trying to see straight. And I noticed that the whole world felt like it was on its axis and everything was turning.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, that's scary when you're in open water. Even as a swimmer, I was like, what is wrong? I can't see straight. So I kind of moseyed over to a buoy nearby and just hung on to it. I took off my cap and goggles and just tried to get the water out of my ears and then recap and get my goggles again and just gather myself. I lost about 4 to 5 minutes waiting for that vertigo to clear. And finally, I could see straight again. And then I just kind of finished out the swim. And when I got out, I was just under 30 minutes. And, you know, I know you saw that, Gunner, and you didn't know what was
Dude,
going on at the time.
I was panicking. I was like,
I
"Oh
know.
God, what happened? What's going
Yeah.
on here?" Like that was stressful because one of the nice parts, if you're going for time, right?
Yep.
One of the nice parts about 70.3 North Carolina is that nice down current
Down.
swim,
Yep.
and so
Yep.
I know based off of your swim fitness in general, like I would expect you to be around that 29-ish minute mark on a normal swim, right?
Yeah.
And so on a swim where people are usually 5, 6 minutes faster than their time, to see that, I was a bit like,
Yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah. And for context, the previous year, so back when I was more out of shape, I did 25 something at,
Yeah,
2024 Wilmington. And so I got out of the water automatically discouraged. And this is where the mental discipline kind of came in. And I immediately shut it down. I was like, all right, that's that. We really just got to buckle down, like get through this transition, get to the bike, and let's keep executing the race. So basically, even though I was frustrated, I put that thought to bed. I was like, we don't have time to dwell on this. It happened, kind of outside of my control, and that kind of stuff happens in race day. But I got to the bike, and I basically was riding within my power. We talked about shutting off the power meter because I don't want to get inside my head.
yeah,
So basically, I just focused on like going off of feel the entire time. And I just felt out like what is a proper bike power that I can push. And I was watching the time and I was looking at the miles to make sure we were kind of on track, but I wasn't trying to over push it, knowing that I wanted to execute this run well.
yeah,
Um, and then when I got to the run, I really felt those brick workouts that you said. They paid huge dividends because I got to the run and I remember running out of T2, I was hustling. But I still had like an hour and 51 minutes, which is not, I mean, for a normal half marathon,
Yeah.
anything that I had run before that, and you were telling me to go like and sub hour 50 minutes on the half marathon on
Yeah.
fresh legs, that would have been kind of a tall ask already. And so running out off the bike in a half Ironman with an hour and 51 to basically just hit 5 hours, I was worried. I really had a lot of self-doubt creeping in. I was like, we're at my weakest leg now. I don't know if I can lock in and bring this home.
Yeah,
But
I was a bit nervous as well seeing that because I know the game plan we talked about was in an ideal world, you are starting the run
yep.
at the 3 hour mark.
Our whole goal was our whole goal was, can we get 3 hour?
Swim plus bike plus both transitions under
Yep.
3 hours because it's just with the brickwork we did, like I knew your run fitness was hugely improved, but I wasn't quite sure, really how much better it was.
Yeah, and I honestly didn't know. I was like, all right, we're gonna trust the work that we've been doing, but
Yep.
hopefully my run can hang on. And the first mile felt all right, and I was holding like I think it was like 8:30 or maybe 8:15, but I was thinking like I want to start to build a buffer, but also like I can't afford to walk. At that point, like I was feeling both shins. I was feeling both shins. I was feeling in pain. Like my hips were talking to me a little bit. But in my head, I was like, we don't have time. We have no buffer here to walk. Like we can't walk the aid stations. I need to knock off a few of these miles and get like at least halfway and reassess. Basically, it wasn't until like, 5 miles left where I saw it, and I think I had like 45 minutes left. And I was like, okay, 45 minutes left. I have 5 miles left, like 9 minutes a mile. I think I can bring this home. And then basically, I think it was like with 30 minutes left, I had a 5K to go. And I was like, okay, unless something catastrophic happens, I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure we're going to
that
do
was
it.
because I was on a training ride that morning and I kept pulling my phone out of my pocket. Where's Joey?
Yeah,
What's
yeah.
he doing? How are we? And I was just like, I think I saw you click through the 10K at, was it sub 50? Like you were,
It was around that 50
yeah,
minute
you were
mark.
like just under 50 minutes or so. And I was like, damn, he's
Yeah.
flying. Like, hang on to it, buddy. So, you got
Yeah.
through. So you got through 10 at under 80 minutes, and I was
Yep.
like, we are in a good spot here.
And I think that was that, that's why on that race, even though I PR'd my bike and even though like I was able to make it, like I should be proud of my swim for not panicking and just finishing it out and getting through that bout with vertigo because that was a little bit scary.
Mhm.
But I am most proud of the run because that with basically no buffer and you and myself not knowing where my run abilities were and if I could pull
Yeah,
that off, it really came down to like mentally, you can't afford to stop. You have to lock in. You have to build yourself a buffer, but also be careful not to overrun
yeah,
and then screw yourself over on the last few miles. And also had to do like again, not make my previous mistakes, do my nutrition correctly, and that's where that practice came in. Like I knew when to take my nutrition. I knew what my gut could handle. And so I'm really just proud of how it all came together. And I think the highlight of the day was really like mentally locking in on the run to bring home the sub five. And it was crazy because I thought about everybody I was telling about this goal. I was like, I cannot miss this another year. Like my wife's here supporting me. It was my
I know
friend.
that feeling.
It was my friend's first half Ironman too. And I was like, dude, I can't miss this again. Like I'm gonna be so disappointed. So, anyways, that was the race.
That was a really good one, and I think to kind of top the year off, like we did, some time off, and then a couple weeks later, you hit another half marathon PR, and I was an hour 40, and I want to preface this by saying, yes, always take your chip time, never take what Strava tells you, but the course was 13.9 miles. So, do the math there. I think it's around like a 134, 35 or something. But it was a huge. So the run gains we made this year with minimal time actually running,
Yep.
cannot be overstated there. So, it's been honestly been fantastic. And I think, kind of like just with everything else, like we fit it around your life, which was another thing,
Mm-hmm.
from your previous stint in triathlon, we know training for California and whatnot, you were, even talking to me at that point, like I'm feeling burned out. I'm doing so much, like, whether it was your coach saying, hey, you have to do X, Y, and Z, or, just not really having the leeway to go out and be a normal human being. Like you're kind of, robotic in that approach. And I think, that was to a detriment where, when you came back into triathlon, I think one of the biggest things that we talked about was, outside of your goals, what you want to do was, I want to make sure I don't burn out again. I want to make sure I can handle triathlon around my life. And I've always told you, like, you do what you got to do. I will let you know what is to be missed if you miss the training. Like, and at the end of the day, like,
Yeah.
you are the athlete, you're the human being, and I will optimize the time that you give me and, try to hit the goals with the parameters we have.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's been super helpful, because if I don't know, just like, back in high school, like swimming, coach would like, why are you late to practice? Or,
Yeah.
like you're in the pool 6 days a week, but like your life responsibilities are so much less in high school. And now, like, nowadays, I find if I'm waking up early for work or I got a presentation or I'm super stressed, like, yeah, I might have an off week. Yeah, I might
Yeah.
miss a couple more training sessions. And I've also learned to, like, I think part of maturing is realizing like your commitments are different and responsibilities are different than when they were in high school. So I can't compare my, I can't tell myself that, oh, you're less dedicated of an athlete
Yeah.
now than you used to be. Like, what happened, because that's how the old me would think. And I think just, being married now and having career responsibilities, um it's what happened?
I don't know, your camera cut out.
Oh,
You're back.
whoops. Learning to balance that so to prevent burnout, I think is absolutely crucial, because speaking long term, like if I want to ultimately qualify for world championships or like go for some of these bigger goals, Rome wasn't built in a day. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to not burn out in order to get there. And part of
Yeah.
that is like learning to juggle all of these life responsibilities and balance it, and like spending time with family and friends instead of just, skipping 100% of life stuff to focus on, working out.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, like for every single person, like their priorities are different. Right? For
yeah,
me, like the amount of stuff I've skipped in my athletic career is huge, right? Like because I've been so dedicated. But that was my choice, and I don't have the regrets. But there's like it's just what you want to do. That's why I always say the athlete sets the parameters of their life.
yeah,
And there are so many people that feel like they can't go be a human and be a super dedicated athlete. Where I would rather it take us 5 years to hit your goals than be on track in 3 years and you're burned out after two. Like
yeah,
there's not, So I think we've managed it well, and like we were able to hit the goals.
yeah,
So far it's been working really well, and as long as you're staying fresh in it, that's the big thing. And I think, as you said, like you want to qualify for a world championship, regardless of what that distance is, right?
yeah.
It could be 70.3, it could be a Kona, it could be a short course, and so that's where we're at now, right? And so looking ahead, we're looking at um, short course USAT nationals in
Yep.
August,
Yep.
and then maybe after that we'll take on another long course race. I know you text me today, would it be dumb if I did California 8 weeks later? So, well, that is not
Yeah.
not a dumb move, right? So we will take that in stride, but definitely just kind of stay and foot on the gas and we've seen a lot of progress, but again, it's been less than 2 years, man. There's
I know.
so much more left. So that that world championship race is gonna happen,
But
and it could be we could get there this year. Could be another couple, but I'm excited about that.
yeah, I am too. I think what's crazy is that I'm hitting I destroyed my half marathon PR. I PR'd my and went sub 5 in the 70.3 by quite a bit.
Mhm.
And so I'm seeing all these improvements, but because I'm not I don't know how to say this, but like before I would almost try too hard. Like I would go
Yeah,
100% in every workout. I wouldn't recover. I wouldn't stretch. There wasn't like this balanced approach that we're taking. And yes, we do a lot of intensity. Like that's the whole thing that you've talked about in
yeah,
your other video. And so we're doing all of those things, but at the same time, it doesn't feel as big of a mental drain or that I have to try as hard, but I'm still at like by far at my endurance peak right now. So
yeah. I mean, we think about a 70.3 build where you PR'd by 13 minutes, by the way, and your biggest week of training was, I'm just looking back, dead on 13 hours. Your biggest week of training, that entire block was 13 hours. And I don't think people realize like what they can do with a limited amount of time. That was your longest ride, 3 hours, 3 hours, 5 minutes was your
mhm.
longest ride of a 70.3 training block. So that 13 hours was an hour 20 in the pool, just
Yep.
under 10 on the bike, and 2 hours of running. So, we're playing um, we're playing with a lot of moving variables,
Yep.
between what you can handle running, and it's all been working out so far. And so, we're looking at trying to continue this trend. And obviously, what is my hair doing, man? Sorry, but like, you're it's not going to be exponential, right? It's going to be that
Yeah.
logarithmic. It's going to start to level out and
Right,
improve
right.
very slowly. But where we're at here, finishing up year two, working together, I think we're still kind of on the peak ramp of that improvement. So you put another year in, we're looking at another huge year of improvement, and then maybe after that, it'll be a little bit more marginal. But overall, I think it's just been a good process. And because you're better preparing yourself outside of the training hours, you are
Yeah.
mentally engaged, ready to do it. Like,
Yep.
if you're excited about it and happy doing it, everything else is going to be better.
Yep. Yeah. I agree 100%. The other thing, like I want to mention and maybe kind of offer a different perspective to the viewers is that I am not a type A person. The reason I say that is because I feel like triathlon it's filled with hardworking, dedicated athletes,
Mhm.
and I'm hardworking, dedicated, but I am not like type A. I don't wake up at 5 a.m. I'm not like
So,
I don't know.
seeing you do doubles both in
I
the evening, I'm like,
I
what?
I I don't know how to put it, but like I just am a chill person.
Yeah,
Like
I would say you're a lot more relaxed than a lot of people are, and you're a lot more like you trust the process. And instead of, there are people that go out there, they're like, I'm gonna grab the bull by the horns and steer it the way I want it to go.
yeah,
But, I've never done this, but I would assume if you grab a bull by the horns, it's not going to steer where you want it to go, right?
yeah,
So instead, you're like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to just check boxes. And
yeah,
that's, regardless, type A, type B, you have to have that mentality of like, just check the boxes. And
yeah,
some days it's going to be great, and some days it's going
yeah,
to suck. But, you check boxes, and that's why we're here.
yep. And I think it comes down to just like putting in the work daily, like you said, listening to your coach, but like putting in the hard work over time, yet consistently.
Yeah.
Consistency is like the biggest thing. Um, you may show up to race day like I did, and you're like, well, I don't know if I'm as fit as my past self, but then that's where you trust the training. You're like, well, I checked those boxes for an entire year. I kept showing up, and that's that consistency. And then, like, wouldn't you know, it paid huge dividends come race day. And
Yeah.
I didn't believe it. I was like, I don't feel that fit, but I mean,
Right.
we're gonna find out, and we found out.
Yeah, and it was great. And I mean, I think overall, great path. It's been a fun 2 years, and I'm super stoked
Yeah,
on what we got coming up. So, any last thoughts from you, man?
I don't really have anything.
All right, great.
I think, you know,
I think we'll leave the viewership with what has been said.
yep,
But we are definitely going to be talking again at some point in the future, and
yeah,
I think with Nick, who's been on the channel here before, and he'll be back on again. Um, he's going to kind of want to get a series together with some of these athletes I'm coaching, you and Travis, and we'll talk to Hannah here in the future that have their sights set on that world championship and kind of document that path to qualifying a little bit more in depth. So
yeah. We're gonna do a podcast.
I hope everyone's a fan of Joey. There is a podcast coming in 2026, but no, I think it'll be more actual like video diary type thing. We're scheming it in the background right now, but if you're not a fan of Joey, anybody watching, that's too bad because you'll be seeing more of him. No, or if you want, you just decide not to watch it. So yeah, I think that's all from us.
Yep. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for hopping on. Good to chat.
Yep.